Hello students, welcome to Ashish Polala classes. Today in the present video, I am going to start a new chapter of Indian Constitution, which is the historical background of the Constitution of India. The first question arises, sir, why are you going to start this historical background of the Constitution of India? The answer is very simple, because to do the proper study of the constitution of any country, it is very important for us to have a brief idea to the historical process which led the constitution of that particular country to its present form. So far as the constitutional history of India is concerned, we need not to go to any period beyond British period. Beyond the British period, in India there were the period of Hindu period, Muslim period, but for constitutional history of India, we need not to go to any period beyond what is known as British period, because all the modern political institutions, whether it is the executive, legislature, or judiciary, all these modern political institutions had been originated and developed during the British period. So the next question arises that whether there were any phases in the British period. The answer is yes. So for the proper study of the British period, we can broadly divide the period which is known as British period into five phases. They are: number one, from 1600 to 1765 is the first phase of British period. The second phase starts from the year 1765 and it ends on 1858. The third phase starts in the year 1858 and it ends on the year 1990. The fourth phase starts from the year 1919 and it ends on the year 1947. And the last phase of British period was 1947 to 1950. We will discuss all these phases in detail in the next videos. But today I am concerned with the first phase of the British period, in which the Britishers came in India. This period was started in the year 1600 and it ends on 1765. This period is known as coming of the Britishers in India. We all know that Britishers came to India in the year 1600 and they came in India as trader in the form of East India Company. When East India Company want to came in India, then to facilitate such a venture in India, some of the merchants of London formed themselves into a company, and this company was known as East India Company. The company secured for it a charter from Queen Elizabeth in December 1600. Charter can also be known as authority, which was received from Queen Elizabeth. So I want to repeat, the company secured for it a charter from Queen Elizabeth in December 1600. This charter settled the constitution of company, powers and privileges. According to this charter, the management of the company was vested in the hands of a governor along with 24 members, and all the members of the East India Company were the Britishers. According to this charter, East India Company had the monopoly of trade in the area of East. That means to say, no other company of England can came in India and start its trading business in India, because according to the charter, the company had the monopoly of trade in the area of East from the side of UK, and India falls in the east side. Not only this, the East India Company had the authority to keep an armed naval force for its security. What was the tenure of this charter? This charter was granted to the company in the first instance for a period of 15 years, and it was terminable, but after giving a 2 years notice. This charter could be renewed if the Crown of England thinks that the interest of the Crown and people of England were not affected prejudicially by East India Company. When the company came in India, then the East India Company started establishing its trading center and factories at several places in India. Do you know what was the first establishment of East India Company? The first settlement of the company was at Surat. And this first settlement was started in the year 1612, which was established through the royal Farman from the Emperor Jahangir. According to this royal Farman, East India Company had granted the land as well as various other concessions by Emperor Jahangir. Now, time was passed, and with the passage of time, East India Company got new development in India. And with the passage of time, factories at Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta became the presidency's town of East India Company. Now the question arises how the administration in the presidency town was carried on by East India Company. As far as presidency town of East India Company were concerned, the administration of these presidencies was carried on by the president and a council in which the council composed of the employees of the company. What was the legislative power under the Charter of 1601? The answer of this question is very simple. As the company came in India as trader, so they have very limited power to make the laws. But the Charter of 1601 granted to the governor and company, not to the president and council. The Charter of 1601 granted to the governor and the company power to make laws, but that laws should be reasonable laws. And these laws were made for the good governance of the company. In this charter, the legislative power of the company was very limited in scope, because all the laws which was made by East India Company were not to be contrary to the laws, statutes, or customs of England. That means to say, all the laws made by East India Company should be consistent to the laws, should be consistent to the statutes, should be consistent to the customs which were prevalent of in England. If any law is contrary to the laws, statutes, or customs of England, then that law can be declared as null and void. That is why it is stated that law made by East India Company were not to be contrary to the laws, statutes, or customs of England. Here it is also very important to note that in the Charter of 1601, no power to legislate for a territory had been given to the company. Why it is so? Because the company was purely a trading concern and it was not a political sovereign in the beginning. After the Charter of 1601, the Charter of 1609 and 1661, similar power were affirmed in favor of the company. Thereafter, the Charter of 1693 was issued, in which no mention was in respect of legislative power. Then, after the Charter of 1693, a charter of 1726 was again issued in favor of company, in which there were some modification in the legislative power of the company. Now let us discuss what changes were made by the charter of 1726 in the legislative power of the company. In the previous charter, we had studied the legislative power of the company was vested in the governor. But under the charter of 1726, this legislative power was vested in the court of directors who were situated in England. But there was a practical problem. The court of directors who was sitting in England, they were not conversant with the conditions which were prevailing in India. Therefore, it was considered by the court of directors to vest the law-making power in those persons who were acquainted with the Indian conditions. Accordingly, the Charter of 1726 authorized the governor and council of three presidencies to make bylaws, rules, and ordinances for the good governance of the company in their areas. And they can also impose punishment for the contravention of the laws made by the court of directors and governor and council. But it is also very important to note that the bylaws, rules, ordinances, and punishments were to be reasonable, and these punishments or bylaws, rules, and ordinances should not be contrary to the laws and statutes of England. And they were not to be effective. They cannot be implemented in India unless and until the bylaws, rules, ordinances, and punishment had been approved and confirmed in writing by the company's court of directors. The Charter of 1726 also established the Mayur courts at Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras. And by this charter, they expressly introduced English laws into these presidencies. That means to say, first of all, in the Charter of 1726, law-making power was given to the Court of Directors. Secondly, they established the Mayur Court at Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras. And by this charter, they introduced English law into these presidencies. But it is also very important to note here that until the second half of 18th century, Britishers had not become ruling power in India. It was still a trading concern in India, which has not any concern with the ruling power. But thereafter, events of great importance took place in the interior of Bengal. It was a period when there was gradual disintegration of the Mughal Empire, because the last strong emperor Aurangzeb of the Mughal Empire was dead, and after his death there was a great decline of the controlling power of the Mughal Empire. The East India Company took the advantage of this situation of the death of Emperor Aurangzeb, and they started to lay down the foundation of the British Empire in India after their victory of the company in the Battle of Plassey. This Battle of Plassey was fought in the year 1757 against Sirajuddaulah. And who was Nawab Sirajuddaulah? He was the Nawab of Bengal. After the victory in the year 1756, in the year 1765, Shah Alam granted the Diwani power to the company, in which responsibility of collection of revenue was given to the company. Hence, we can say that The year 1765 made a turning point in the Anglo-Indian history, and we can treat it as commencing the period of territorial sovereignty by the East India Company. Now, at this time, after getting the Diwani power from Shah Alam, the East India Company threw off the mask of traders, and now they appeared in the true garb of the ruler in India. So, this is something about the first phase of the British period. In the next lecture, we will start the second phase of British period. And if you like my video and not subscribe my channel yet, then please subscribe my channel. And if you want to take notes of my law lectures, then my notes are available at ashishpolalaclasses.blogspot.com. Thank you very much.